Here in stage 4, the final stage, we're going to take a look at polishing and special effects to be able to get this final quality. So this is the final product that we'll produce in this stage. And when working in 3D, everything comes together at the very last second. So here we'll take a look at how we can create bevel materials. So this is a Blinn material that will apply to these beveled chamfered corners of our logo that'll help trace the logo and help that to really stand out. So here we'll take a look at how we can enter into sub-object mode, how we can select bevels using some selection techniques, and how we can apply sub-object materials. We'll then take a look at a special effects attribute within the material such as glow to help this logo really pop. We'll then use an advanced rendering engine tool called Mental Ray. And a nice feature of Mental Ray is Final Gather. That'll help us take us from this quality with our logo to this nice bounced lighting effect where we have a very high quality render. Just to finish things off, we'll use exposure and gamma to be able to fine-tune the colors to get this final quality. At the very end, we'll save an image and see how we can save our 3D file to a JPEG. So the first polishing technique we'll take a look at is applying a bevel material. So the approach we're going to take is creating a nice metallic looking material on the bevels, and that'll really help outline the logo and make it pop. So to do this, we need to take a look at a new tool, the ability to actually select multi-sub-object faces. So getting in here and selecting just the face, not the entire object. So to be able to do this, we need to switch to a sub-object component level, which we can do from our status line, or a more common method is right-clicking on the object. And remember this pop-up menu we saw earlier when assigning materials? Well, here we'll take a look at an additional tool. Here we can switch to what's called face mode. In face mode, we can select the individual faces of a polygon. Now, just so we don't have to go through and click all these little faces, you can imagine how painstaking that would be. Let's find a quick way that we can select these bevels. So here I'm going to use my top view, and I'm going to marquee drag around the 3D logo text. So here I essentially selected all the faces that make up this geometry. Now from my front view, I'm going to select what I don't need, and we can deselect things by holding Control before we make a selection. So I'm going to hold down the Control key on my keyboard and then marquee drag and deselect all the middle faces and bottom faces. So what that leaves me with is the bevel face and the top face that makes up the logo. So the last thing I need to do is hold Control and click on the top faces to deselect those. So now my selection is made up entirely of just the bevel faces. So that's a little selection tip and technique so that we don't have to painstakingly go around and select all the faces that make up the bevel. Alright, so now just like we did before when assigning material, we'll right click, go to assign a new material, and in this case we'll assign a Blinn material. Again, Blinns are more shiny versions of the Lambert material, so this will create a more metallic material for us. So for the color, I'll go into the color swatch and I'll select a nice orange color so that it matches the logo color that I have here. So we're trying to match that color. And I'll darken this up just a little bit. And then I'm going to play with these two settings, eccentricity and specular roll-off. Notice how I adjust the sliders, how this adjusts the highlight size on the test sample sphere here. So I'm going to turn down the eccentricity, and I'm going to turn up the specular roll-off, which is basically the intensity of that highlight. So in turn, what we're doing is we're creating a very chrome looking material. So the highlights are going to be very bright along this border bevel edge. Just to see how that's affected the scene so far, let's come up and take a test render of our scene. So if we look side by side, see how that nice bevel material is highlighting the logo now, and we're getting some nice reflections from our lights taking place on those bevels. So you can see how that material really helped to enhance the overall polishing of our logo. Now let's take it one step further. Here's another cool little special effects tip, and very fittingly the name of this is special effects. So if we hit that drop down in our attribute editor, we can actually add a glow as well. Now be very sparing with this setting because it adds quite a bit. A little bit goes a long way. But you can see how it actually gives a glow to that edge, and that gives a very cinematic feel to our logo. So I'm going to apply just a little bit of glow to the edge just to make the logo face pop, especially where we have that light bloom hitting there. It gives just a nice effect, the glow really happening there. And I can tone that down just a bit by playing with the specular roll-off, the intensity of the specular highlights, if we don't want that to be so bright. So if we want our highlights to be a little bit more dull, by turning down the specular roll-off, that will affect that setting. So the best way to learn how these settings affect the render is really just by playing with these settings, look at the test sample swatch, and then do a test render to see how it affected your scene. And then do a side-by-side comparison to see what that overall look and feel has. So that's how you create a bevel material. Let's go ahead and recap those steps, and I'll just keep that image for later reference purposes. So in our perspective view, we wanted to select the bevel materials. So we selected the overall object, we went into face mode, and then remember the little selection technique. Do a marquee drag, select the entire object, and then use your side views in the 4-view layout to control deselect what you don't need, which would be the middle faces, and also the top faces. And that leaves you with your bevel selection. At that point, just go about assigning a new Lambert or a new Blinn material, The Blinn will have more of the specularity, where the Lambert is what's applied to the front face, and that will give the nice specular pop. Now, just a little tip. At this point, since we have two materials, we've created what's called a sub-object material, meaning we have more than one material applied to one object. So the right-click material attributes might not work anymore. Here you can see that this tab only gives us the one material. So here's how you can find your new Blinn material. If you select the object, in the attribute editor, you can scroll to the right, and there you'll see the new Blinn and the original shader. So that's another way to navigate and access the material shaders that have been created on the object. So at this point, go ahead and pause this video, create those bevel highlight materials, and I'll do the same. I'll repeat the process and apply a metallic material with a red Blinn here on the heart, and then a white metallic Blinn here on the bevel of the eye. Once you're done editing in face mode, you can simply select away from an object, or you can right-click on the object and go to object mode, and that will exit you out of the subcomponent, the face mode. Alright, so here I applied the bevel materials to the heart and the eye, and at this time you should have a bevel material on your logo as well. Let's take a test render and see how this affected the overall render. Alright, so now we're starting to get a nice subtle bevel taking place on the eye and also on the heart symbol. You can see that really helps to pop and stand out. And maybe I'll just turn up the glow intensity just a little bit on those effects. Also, what will help is having the light hit these predominantly to make those stand out. So I can take my light in the upper top corner is going to light that bevel right there. So imagine that light standing beside, and as I render now, you can see how that really helps that bevel to pop. So at this point, it's going to be just a trial and error process of moving the lights, adjusting the material attributes. For example, maybe I'll make the red a little bit darker so that this face is not overly blown out. Also the white, you can see that the orange color is dark enough. That's looking good, so I'll need to tone these down. I can also adjust the light intensities, move these around, or try experimenting with shadows on and off. So have fun experimenting with the lighting of your logo, and that's what will really help draw things out. So I'll fine-tune some of the materials and lights, and then we'll take a look at the render that we have, and then proceed to the next step. So I've adjusted my lights and the materials and textures just a bit, and this is the final outcome that I've come up with so far. You can see that we've darkened the ramp texture for the white and also the red, and you can see the bevel highlights are popping really nicely now. Also experimenting with the placement of these lights just a little bit. You can see basically the idea, they're still in the exact same places, just slightly moved.